Hello, everyone. This is Jill Aitoro with Cyber Risk Alliance and SC Media, joining you from RSA. We are closing out today with an awesome interview. We are joined with Dave Dewalt, founder of NightDragon, and Matt Carroll, who is founder of Immuta. We're going to talk about some news that came out of RSA today, and we're going to chat a little bit about emerging technologies, what we see happening in the investment community. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having us, Jill.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So I want to kick it off with the news, and I'll start with you, Dave. It relates to both of you, of course, but what did you all announce this morning?
Yeah, we were really proud to announce a partnership with Immuta, with NightDragon, and helping them to lead a $100 million fundraising round. As you probably know, Jill, we do growth stage investments at NightDragon, and we focus on some of the biggest threat areas or biggest trend areas in the market, and did a lot of research and a lot of work on trying to find the best partner in the areas of data security, data privacy, data governance. We found Matt, founder, CEO, awesome founder, love partnering with them. Very proud to help lead the round, but also news is we also partnered along with Snowflake too.
Oh,
and
okay.
I'll let Matt talk a little bit about that, but big news, $100 million fundraising round, unicorn level, we're allowed to say unicorn level.
Yes.
And exciting news for Matt. Congratulations, Matt, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's huge news, and I do want to dig more into why it was appealing at some point for NightDragon. But first, Matt, I want you to talk a little bit about the technology. I know you all are in the cloud. You are in terms of focusing on the data side of cloud security. So tell us first what exactly Immuta is.
Yeah, absolutely. And first, I just want to say, Dave and the NightDragon team, this whole dimension of cybersecurity and where data security is going, that's why we wanted to partner with these guys, right? The history is all kind of culminating to cloud. I think when you talk about our technology, and I think there's very few people who understand this history and how fast this is moving the way it was before. But we were at infrastructure security, and then we moved to network security. But now the world operates on data, right? Mm-hmm. And data is ubiquitous everywhere in the world. And there are 3-person startups that can be selling and operating globally instantaneously, right? Yeah. And so that's never happened before. I mean, think about the ability. What's happening right now is people can get access to data anywhere, anytime, nearly on any system. And so the gap of our technology is what we're trying to solve is in the modern data stack. So the Snowflakes, the Databricks, the Redshifts of the world, as we compute data in the cloud, how do we enforce privacy? How do we enforce regulatory oversight? How do we enforce data contracts? So who can use the data and why? Our platform makes that simple. We allow people to connect to the data in these systems, build policies and control it automatically, and then monitor who is doing what in there to prove compliance.
Okay, now it's interesting because very often it's a matter of looking backwards because a lot is built and executed without the security and the regulations top of mind. So how do you manage that versus that go-forward approach?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about what everything is real time now. Mm-hmm. So that's what's really important to understand is the way we have to reshape our thinking is that we're embedded into the compute. So much like in big data, I know this is a security conference, but in big data, right, we had to separate compute from storage, right, to get scale, right, to query lots of data. The way we're moving forward now in this modern security landscape is the consumer is demanding real-time understanding of how their data is being used. Organizations are being held to regulatory oversight where there potentially are financial penalties to the CEO if they don't have cybersecurity protections and oversight. And we're also seeing data jurisdictions form where certain countries are saying, hey, we have certain rights to oversee this. So you have to embed into that compute and enforce those policies in real time, and that requires a separation of policy from platform. Yeah. So much like in the security paradigms where we started to separate out our endpoints and look at each endpoint and determine authentications, in the world of data, we can't do every single person and every transaction. There's just too many. So we need to abstract that and automate that, and that's the core of our platform. That's what's changing right now.
Okay.
Jill, think about it this way too, if I could add on to what Matt's saying is I try to use the analogy of this perfect storm, like a perfect data storm, right? And what's a perfect storm? It's a lot of confluences coming together that has created a significant problem and an opportunity for nearly every enterprise. So what are those issues, right? All the things that Matt was just saying, regulatory oversight, coming from nearly every country, every state. And everybody has a little different privacy angle. Mm-hmm. And then you start to look at all the data breaches that are happening, darn near one every couple minutes right now. And at the heart of the data breach is an access problem and a governance problem. Mm-hmm. So nearly every data breach, we go back and look and said, well, What was the root cause of that? Well, we didn't really understand how access to this data might have been, how it was, created and cataloged, and ultimately you had an access problem. So somebody coming along and solving a data plane above all these data lakes is going to create a very important platform for the future.
Right.
And data breaches, regulatory oversight, and then you take this, the volume of data that's now coming out because we have these hyperscale clouds now and these hyperscale data lakes.
Yep.
And suddenly most CISOs and most organizations are just drowning in data. And we got to manage that data, and we got to slay that dragon, I like to say, from a data point of view, and just create a better framework for doing it. And I think Immuta's done a great job with that.
That's great. And I want to expand on that a little bit because, as you mentioned, NightDragon really looks at companies when they're really ready to scale, and it's ready to go big, so to speak. That's how I describe you guys anyway. So, talk to us a little bit about the criteria that you would describe for when you are ready to invest and why Immuta fit that model.
This is the fun part of having Matt right next to me while we do this. But, I always talk about the 3 T's, Jill, and Matt's probably heard this many times, but I call it team, tech, and TAM, right? So as a big investor, we look at growth. Is the company ready for growth? And for us, it's typically a company crossing about 20 million of ARR. It's a company who has proven that they can scale from kind of small to large enterprises.
Yeah.
They've proven they can cross oceans when it comes to scaling. They have a team of operators and personnel in there that essentially know how to scale and build a company. And then there's a very large total addressable market. And when you start to look at what Immuta's doing, obviously we just talked about it, you have all 3 of them. You have a leader, a founder, a highly passionate CEO who understands. In the next 5 minutes you'll realize, we probably don't know as much as he's forgotten. So he's just so smart at this area, but he has so many customers and so much proven success in live deployments of some of the largest data environments in the world.
Yeah.
So we obviously saw there was wow, if he can do it with these type companies and logos, and he can explain which ones, but if he can do it with those, we can do it with a lot more.
Yep.
And then you start to put together the ability to scale a company with lots of partnerships and things that NightDragon can bring. We saw a hyperscale growth opportunity out of Immuta. So put together a strong team, great tech, big market, and that's the recipe we look for. We saw all of that. And last thing I'll say about that, we always look for a strategy of win the government, win the market kind of thing. You've heard me talk about that, Jill. And this company exemplifies that with his background, some of the customers that they have, and capabilities that they can deliver where the government can be a partner, can be an influencer, can be a customer, and we love that too. So
yeah, and actually that's a good point, Matt. Talk a little bit backwards. Not everybody necessarily knows the story of the company, where you came from, how I know you were involved with the intelligence community to start, so tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, it's where I actually take a lot of our story way back to 2008 Baghdad. A lot of people don't know this, but when the surge occurred, what we saw was all of a sudden, if you remember, it's kind of crazy how long ago this was, but we started to see Android phones on the battlefield. We were introducing drones. We were having to do 270 megabits per second down lossless video and merging with other data sources. And so this concept of how do we merge a lot of different disparate data sources together, by which all of it is highly sensitive and regulated at scale. If you remember the scale of those operations, we just couldn't handle it. And so, you saw later CIA invested in commercial cloud solutions, so C2S, and through a very large AWS procurement. And a lot of people, I think, saw that as purely a application migration, cost savings, consolidation. But I don't think that was the case. And I think we're seeing more and more where it's actually a data play. How do we get more users or any user on any data if they need it?
Yeah.
And so long as they have the right. And so that's really what created our company. We were working with one agency where that organization, it was very hard to determine, hey, if I just have 2 or 3 different data sources from 2 or 3 different organizations, what's the rules?
Yeah.
Like, how do I deal with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do I prove that we complied? And so it's what should be a really simple question, right? And so that's what created this company. And just, based off of our backgrounds in the government, they invested us with no product.
Yeah.
Right? And they just saw an opportunity to take people who had solved this kind of complex, disparate data problem and say, okay, now solve the data bureaucracy problem that we have to allow our future data scientists to be able to act on the data when we need it from a safety and from a regulatory perspective, right? Because we want to be able to act very quickly in the government. And I don't think we'll ever not make data decisions anymore.
Yeah, it's amazing too, because if you do it in government, you have to imagine it could also contribute to the challenges we're facing in terms of threat sharing across public and private sector and so forth, because there's a confidence there that it's being managed the right way and in a secure way. So,
but you could take that, Jill, to almost every industry, right?
Yeah.
And Matt's doing that with his company. So suddenly there's a vaccine that needs to be rushed to market, and you have scientists working all over the world. How do you create access controls, privacy management, bring a product better?
Yep.
So one of the greatest missions that I see in Immuta is, hey, we can stop data breaches and maybe remediate data breaches. That's pretty cool. Yep, we can fix some regulatory things. That's pretty cool. But what about really putting people together around data to create intelligence, to create new products, to create new things, create better productivity?
Right.
And suddenly that starts to open up the world and areas you can do.
Think about data as purely just a risk decision. If I want to be able to access data, if we have another 9/11 event, no one is going to say, you know what, it's not okay to just open up everything we have to anyone.
Right.
Right?
Right.
It's all context, right? And so the problem, though, is most organizations are not built to make risk decisions on data. It's binary. You either get it or you don't.
Especially in government.
Yeah. You can't operate that anymore. It just, that will not work any longer. The best companies will be able to make rapid decisions on somewhere in between.
Yeah.
Utility versus privacy, right? It's a trade-off.
So is it in terms of the technology, and just to kind of clarify, are you helping to automate any of the process? Is some of that being removed from human control? So not human control, but basically where rather than having to manually figure out the authorities, it's to some degree being automated so it can be done quickly.
Yeah, think about it as this, is what's happening now is we're finally, as we all go to cloud, there's consistency.
Yeah.
So the authentication and the authorization layers can kind of blend a little bit. So based off of that identity, we can start making risk decisions. So we can take companies like, one company, we're working with, we took them from a 400-page report on all the rules of how you use data to 52 policies that are just written in our platform.
Yeah.
Now, the combinatorial factors of that could be upwards in the millions of policies.
Yep.
So if you think of another organization we're working with, they have, any moment in time, 96 million unique policies, right? Across 180,000 active users and 56 million unique attributes. So we can determine all the combinatorial factors and make a real-time decision as to what they're authorized to see.
Yeah.
And so it's automation, but it all starts with simplifying what are your global rules.
Yep.
Even the biggest companies in the world have maybe 50 to 100.
Yep. Yeah.
And then they break down to little rules, right? And so one part we're automating. The second part, we're just simplifying compliance, right? Think of connect to the data, control it, but then how do you prove compliance? And simplifying that with really simple policies where you can know who accessed the data, but why did they access the data?
Yeah.
Right. So purpose is everything in this future of ours.
That's great.
And so we're the only platform in the world that offers purpose-based access controls.
Yep.
Why did you collect it? Are you processing it for that same exact reason? If not, risk decision.
Yeah. So it's not just securing data, it's leveraging data is ultimately what you're able to do. Yeah.
And then scale that globally, right? So I mentioned you got to be able to cross oceans here. I mean, his ability to put millions and millions of permutations of policy across cloud and do it across continents, that's hard for startups to do and companies to do. So ready for growth stage? Yeah, Immuta's ready.
That was my next question. So where are you going now? We talk sometimes, when it's time to scale, go big, do you have... what are you going to do with the funding? Do you have future visions of IPO? I know it's not a great environment for an IPO right now. So what are you thinking?
I mean, I always say be pragmatic when it comes to, future forecasting of financials.
Yeah.
Of course, I believe, though, we're uniquely capable of delivering something to the world that others can't. Our background from the U.S. intelligence community, working abroad, working with the customer base we have some of the best engineers in the world to be able to solve this problem, which I think is important for society.
Yeah.
I think that where we're going, so whether that's an IPO, whether that's the next best opportunity, I don't know, but I'm focused on the next quarter.
Yeah.
The big thing I would say is like the proceeds, and what we're doing though is one is, listen, we wanted to build a war chest for 3 reasons. The first and foremost is that the elephant in the room is we're probably going to recess as a market.
Yeah.
But as that happens, I don't think security in general is going to recess.
Yeah.
And I think that actually the greatest brands in the world are going to double down on their brand.
Yep.
Right. And so with that, we want to leverage some of these proceeds for, M&A activity. There are some great companies out there that have some incredible technology, but we just believe our customers need simplicity around their data security layer.
Yeah.
Right. And there's just too many tools out there. So if we can converge into a platform and deliver for them, that's great value for them. Second is globalization, data jurisdiction, sovereignty rights. This isn't going away.
Yeah.
Whether you're in Japan, whether you're in Australia, Europe, Brazil, China, it's a complex world. We're not going to stop delivering goods and products throughout the world. And so all these companies from a supply chain perspective, we need to be able to sustain and support them from a customer success, from on infrastructure. So to globalize our company, not just our go-to-market, but globalize how we support customers. And third is R&D. I mean, it's interesting. I talked to someone from Mandiant this morning. We don't necessarily understand the data scientist, the data engineer. Why do they do things in an enterprise?
Yeah.
Who is doing what? And so zero trust concepts of the network security layer are all about each endpoint. In data science, it's the user and their behavior. What's normal, what's not. What's happening with the query itself? Did they normally run that query? Does someone have that role? And then what's happening with the data? Did the data change? So we're going to invest in R&D around monitoring capabilities and really become a true data security company, not just a data access company, but a holistic data security company.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And Dave, to kind of close it out a bit, you and I have spoken recently about what Matt just said. It's a tumultuous market right now. And, whether there would be as much investment this year, you and I talked that it might not be the huge year that it has been in the past, but that there would be pockets. This obviously falls into that area. But how are you feeling in terms of the market at large? Are you encouraged? Are you still feeling a little tumultuous?
Yeah, I mean, I see security over the last 2 decades, and this is almost anti-cyclic market, right? I mean, if the threat environment stays high, the spending environment stays high, and companies will grow.
Yeah.
And so security is here to stay. We have conflicts around the world. We have issues around the world. And so, we'll feel some contractions and maybe some valuations. We already see that. But the need for this capability is in the early innings. And even though cyber's in its going in its 3rd decade, it's still so young. And there's so many. And then it changes so fast.
Yeah.
So you think about all the hyperscalers and the data explosion that's happened, all things Matt's talking about.
Yep.
I mean, that is racing. So, long-winded way of saying, it's great to have a frugal CEO, and Matt is, with a big vision and really smart and really technical, but also aggressive. And to your point, I do see this as a pendulum that's going to swing towards an M&A consolidation game a bit, because so many cybersecurity companies overspent in the golden age window of 2021 and the year prior. So really interesting opportunity for good, strong platforms to become wider, deeper. And I always say, the best companies do better in tougher times.
Yeah.
And so this is an interesting window for us to do even better together.
Yeah.
That's why I got him. I got to do some M&A, and who better, right?
I know, exactly. He knows that area, I hear. I think he has a little history there. So thank you both for doing this with us. I really appreciate it. And good luck with the rest of RSA.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you for having us.
And thank you, everybody, for joining us. This closes out our videos for, what day are we on? Wednesday. But we will be back tomorrow. So come back and join us.